What's going on, everybody? This is the Rogue Ranger here, and with the release of Gear 5 in the anime, there have been some criticisms calling it a retcon. Well, I'm here to do my best to connect the dots and rectify that. Naturally, of course, spoilers ahead. To start off, a retcon is short for retroactive continuity. It's a literary device in which well-established facts or events in the world of a story are adjusted, ignored, and supplemented or even contradicted by subsequent published work which recontextualizes or breaks continuity with the former. Now hear me out before deciding that's exactly what happened with Luffy's Devil Fruit, because it's not. First off, retcons are mainly done by new writers needing to make a change for whatever direction they want to take a pre-existing story. And seeing as Ichiro Oda is the original author of One Piece since its conception to this very day, and he has stated multiple times that he already has the story planned out, him retconning things in his story is extremely unlikely, let alone an important aspect such as Luffy's powers. But let's let the work show for itself. Now, to be clear, nothing has actually changed. We were misled, and Oda isn't the first author to deceive or mislead their audience. Most of the time, they're using a red herring, which is another literary device used in mysteries and thrillers to intentionally mislead the audience towards a false conclusion with misinformation or false clues. Examples include the end of Alabasta. Everything is set up for Vivi to be the newest Straw Hat member, but instead, it's revealed to be Nico Robin. Or during Water 7, when the crew is looking for a new shipwright, you probably thought it was going to be Paulie or Kaku, but in the end it turns out to be Frankie, the ship dismantler gang leader that they were clashing against. And one of the biggest reveals is that Ace is actually Gold Roger's son, is hidden when Garp visits him in Impel Down, and Ace says Luffy and he both have the blood of criminal masterminds running in their veins, making us assume he's referring to Dragon. Twists like these often make a story more interesting and unpredictable, and let's be honest, a predictable story isn't really that engaging. Let's not forget about all the crazy amount of foreshadowing Oda puts in One Piece, like when Sanji uses the alias Mr. Prince in Alabasta just for several arcs later to be revealed to be a prince of the Germa Kingdom. Or Ace's crossed out S tattoo meant for Sabo, a character not mentioned until Ace's passing. And the Tontata tribe that we meet in Dressrosa were foreshadowed in the Jaya arc, with Mont Blanc Nolan mentioning he met a tribe of little people. And that's just a few of the many foreshadowing Oda has laid out. Hardcore fans should know he's not the type to retcon because of how diligent he is in his work creating the expansive world of One Piece and making sure so many events in it are interconnected so well. Like, come on, this is the reason why we nicknamed him Goda, for his skill in planning. Are we going to call it retconning when we found out all the way in the post-NS lobby arc that Shanks, a character introduced in the beginning of the story, is one of the 4 emperors just because it isn't mentioned prior? Or what about Haki? It's all over the story but isn't clearly explained until Rayleigh begins training Luffy during the post-war arc, and we are still learning new things about it as the story continues. Is that a form of retconning? No, it's just another writing technique Oda uses, establishing something early on, and sometimes without us even noticing it, and gradually expanding upon it as the story progresses, with the new information we learn recontextualizing what we knew before. Of course, for this to work, the audience has to actually be paying attention, which may be problematic due to One Piece's length. Many important and relevant hints to the future of the series is often overlooked because it's mentioned or shown in passing. So when it does become relevant, it has to be reminded to the audience. This includes Jinbei, a former warlord that Luffy meets at Impel Down that greatly helps him during the war to rescue Ace, and later even joins his crew. He's mentioned all the way back in Arlong Park. And in that same arc, Luffy's grandfather, the hero of the Marines Garp, is introduced during the cover story about Kobe and Helmeppo's training, and Lola being the daughter of Big Mom. These are all things that come back many arcs later with significant importance. This is why a lot of shows have recaps to remind the audience of what's happened in the last episode, or to remind the viewers of important events relevant to the specific episode they're on, and some of those are just weekly shows. If you're into a story enough, I'd recommend rewatching the story to see how much is set up and hinted early on. Now let's get on with the specific details concerning Luffy's fruit, the Gum Gum fruit or Gomu Gomu no Mi. First off, there are a lot of references and hints to Luffy's powers not being simply rubber, with some conveyed in dialogue and others visually. Oda has stated he chose stretching powers for his main character because it was the funniest power, explaining that no matter how serious the story in the manga was, the reader could still find the battles amusing as well as dramatic. Luffy's goofing fighting style that often confuses both friends and foe alike on whether he's fighting serious or joking around often reflects that. Add that Oda takes inspiration from old school rubber hose animations such as Popeye the Sailor, and the path for Toon Force powers make clear sense. Even Gear 3rd is a clear example of classic rubber hose animation. Also, Gear 3rd and 4th's inflation shouldn't be possible with just rubber powers. Puncturing himself like that should be harmful. Shouldn't be possible is also used by both Kaido and Doflamingo upon seeing Luffy's trajectory changing attacks, telling us the audience there's more to Luffy's powers than what seems. As for the Gum Gum fruit being a paramecia, something I always noticed years ago but brushed off is that Luffy never had free control of his powers like other paramecias. His powers are always active and he can't stretch at will like Mr. Fantastic. He has to forcibly trigger his stretching in gears, which took him years of training and practice to reach. If you look back in the story, most paramecias can activate their powers freely at will. However, having Luffy's powers restricted in such a manner is narratively fitting, as his goal is to be the freest man on the seas, so as the closer he gets to his goal, his abilities reflect that, until he's fighting as freely as he wants to. As for those that think Oda has changed the rules on Devil Fruits, here's a look back. Zones break their own mold more so than either Logias or Paramecias. They can be fed to inanimate objects, drugs can trigger different forms, and some even work very differently than the norm. Check out the egg fruit. Okay, theory time of how Oda hid the zone nature of Luffy's fruit. Oda confirms eating a zone fruit of the same species as your own will not give you powers, no transformations. However, with mythical zones, maybe it's in between, as you'll get powers but no transformations, at least until awakening. For example, if a bird ate Marco's bird fruit, model Phoenix, it wouldn't transform as it's already a bird and would only gain the mythical blue flames. It would only gain a transformation upon awakening. Both Luffy and Sengoku have only demonstrated one form, and recently in the manga, the accused horse Stronger ate the mythical horse fruit model Pegasus and only gained wings. That's the theory I'm working with, but time will tell if I'm right or wrong. Now I'm guessing you're still wondering where's the sun god stuff fit in. Well, in Skypiea, the Shandians in the past are shown to have worshipped a sun god. The idea is there, and as we now know, in the story, devil fruits are dreams and ideas manifested. But it doesn't stop there. If you've watched One Piece long enough, you'll notice the consistent terminology of associating the sun with freedom and darkness with oppression. The sun versus the darkness, which is visually shown during Ace and Blackbeard's fight. Concepts like the dawn of the new world and the world government being characterized as darkness, the sun pirates protecting their former slave crewmates with the symbol of the sun, it's all over the story. Even Luffy's ship is called the Thousand Sunny. So with that in mind, of course the main character of this story will represent the light of freedom that shines through the darkness. This is even foreshadowed in Skypiea when just as everyone is praying to a god to save them from Enel's Rygo cloud covering the skies in darkness, Luffy dispels it before it can destroy Skypiea. When a devil fruit is eaten, the user becomes aware of its basic ability, not its name or its full capabilities. Luffy is told of his devil fruit by Shanks and Lucky Roo. Now it's established there's a devil fruit encyclopedia, which is most likely where they got that info. However, we later learn there are at least two versions, and according to Vegapunk, there's no mention of the Gum Gum fruit in the old version. Obviously, the new one was provided by the world government, and we know how much they love to cover up the truth. They even nuked O'Hara to keep them from figuring out the truth of the Void Century. We have to remember, a lot of stories are mainly told from the point of view of protagonists as the audience surrogate. That way, the audience is fed information just as the protagonists are. However, like the protagonists, we don't question as much if the info is correct, let alone true. One Piece is most certainly not the first story where information told to us in the beginning of the story are revealed to be false or lies. Now, as for why the world government didn't put more precedence on capturing Luffy, first off, the info on the Nika fruit is kept very secret, with only the 5 elders and Imu knowing about it. Remember, Who's Who said the guard who told him about Sun God Nika disappeared and he escaped out of fear of receiving the same fate, so it's not easy for the info to circle back. The world government probably first confirmed Luffy's fruit during NS Lobby with all the government agents around, which is probably why in the next arc, Kuma was sent to Thriller Bark to make sure the Straw Hat's destruction, and Gecko Moria's failure to stop them probably is what led to his expulsion. Their encounter with Aokiji doesn't count, as he was acting on his own and reveals that the world government wasn't taking the Straw Hats too serious up until the point Robin joined. Also, we have to remember, Luffy's career as an active pirate hasn't been that long. Adding pre and post time skip, he's been sailing for less than a year. We also have to take into account all the locations the world government doesn't have power in, like Skypiea, Fishman Island, and generally any Emperor territories. Also, during the 2 year time skip, they weren't even sure if he was even alive after the war. The five elders only caught wind of Luffy's impending awakening due to Zanisha nearing Wano. This is why they had CP0 interfere in the battle between Luffy and Kaido. Now, here's my theory on the origins of the fruit. As devil fruits are dreams manifested, Nika is very likely to have originated centuries ago from the dreams and wishes of the slaves of the first 20 alliance that would later become the world government, inadvertently causing their antithesis to be manifested. So Joy Boy, who obviously was on the side of the ancient kingdom 800 years ago during the Void Century, was probably the world government's greatest threat. After his defeat, the world government tried to erase everything about him, like the Great Kingdom. Like, seriously, it's their MO at this point. However, his presence is still all over the story. The Shandians once believed in a sun god, his name is written on a poneglyph, his history with Fishman Island, the Sun Pirates used the symbol of the sun to replace their marks of slavery, and the One Piece at one point belonged to him. Joy Boy is the person, and the legend of the sun god Nika is where his powers come from, that now belong to Monkey D. Luffy. Nika is basically the One Piece equivalent of a Toon Man that embodies freedom and is revered as a sun god that brings the dawn of freedom to dispel the darkness of oppression. With all that laid out, if you still believe the sun god Nika stuff is all a retcon by Oda, I still hope you enjoyed the video. This has been the Rogue Ranger, and have a nice day.